Welcome to Control Your Career, a podcast to help you conquer uncertainty, shatter imposter syndrome, and rise above the expectations imposed by others. My name is Julia Toothacre, and I am the career coach and strategist at Ride the Tide Collective, my career development company where I offer career coaching courses, and I have a plethora of free content. I have been doing this work for over a decade, and I want to help empower professionals like you to find clarity, navigate your current career with finesse, and propel yourself toward career advancement in alignment with your unique personality, preferences, and values. This podcast is a great place to start your journey toward controlling your career. Season 10 is all about managers and specifically what managers want and expect from their employees and teams. I've brought on managers with at least 10 years of experience managing who are also currently managers to help you understand their mindset and expectations. Each episode will have action items that you can apply to your unique situation and consider in your relationship with your manager. You can find this episode and more at ridethetidecollective.com. And you can connect with me on LinkedIn, where I post career information and inspiration to help you control your career. Welcome, everyone. I am so excited for my guest today because I love it when I get to have people on the podcast that I actually know that are in my world. And I would say that my guest today is probably pretty close to family at this point. Adam Trusty, I am so excited to have you on the podcast. I feel like at this point, because you married one of my best friends, who's like a brother to me. So I feel like we're effectively siblings at this point. Like this is where this is headed for us. So I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you, Julia. I am excited about being here and trying to share a little bit of information of what I've experienced in the last, 10 years.
Yes. So I brought Adam on because as we were getting to know each other, I realized that what he does now fits exactly what I was looking for the podcast this season. So again, I love it when I can bring people on that I know. And what I really love too is that Adam is in healthcare. And I think that is such a big industry for people right now. It's a place where people are going to because there is a lot of opportunity there. And I really want you to talk about kind of your background and your history. How did you get into all of this? And then how did you get into people management? Because I feel like that's always an interesting step that people take in their career.
hmm My beginning, I was set to be an accountant. Both of my degrees are in accounting. And so when I came out of grad school, it was very much a Big Four. This is where I'm going. I'm going to do public accounting, CPA. However, the job market at that point in 2009, of course, had gone down. So I took a job doing medical billing for a family practice. And so from there, it just kind of morphed into this. People were coming to me. I spent 4 years, people just coming to me instead of their normal manager. And so I finally sat down and said with my manager and said, is there a way that I can step into a managerial role? People are already coming to me, trusting me, and I'm already a people person. So I enjoy helping others out and having that answer. So it kind of organically became this, they come to me. So I stepped into that role and I kind of just went for it from there. So over, the last 10 years, I was with the other company for 8 years after that, after I stepped into it. And then I've been in my current spot for 2.5 years, much bigger organization. So a lot more people. And, just kind of, there's been a lot more dynamics to what I do.
Okay, I love hearing this for a couple of reasons. So one, I think knowing that you came from something completely different and got yourself into not only healthcare, but people management from accounting is wild. Like those skill sets are totally different. So I think that's so
Yes.
interesting. And I think good for people to hear who are potentially interested in people management. It
Mhm.
doesn't necessarily matter what your background is. You fell into it very naturally, which I think is what happens for a lot of people is they just see that they
Yes.
enjoy that side of it and they enjoy working with people. So I really appreciate you sharing
Mhm.
that for the audience.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get into the nitty gritty because I feel like with this season, people want to know, what does this look like? What are managers thinking? All these details here. So I want to know, like, let's talk about your people management style because I think that everybody has a different style, a different way that they approach their management of others. So what's your current style, and maybe how have you seen that evolve over the years?
Mhm. My management style is very much people centered, and trust centered. So I don't like to micromanage. I figure we all have our own things to do. I don't need to be watching over their shoulder, nitpicking everything that they do. We all make minor mistakes at least. I own up to them to my staff. So it's just letting them know that that communication is there. And if they're doing what they're supposed to, they're doing it well, they have quality. I let them be independent and they bring things to me as they need to. So I really look at trusting people. Sometimes I trust them too much, I'll be honest. Managers have that fault as well where we want to think the best, or at least I want to think the best in people, but there are some people that I'm learning they're going to take advantage of that. So it's evolved into, I've not hesitancy, but I've become cautious when I see certain things. The repetitiveness of some people. um, I had someone that was being tardy all the time. So I had to sit down with them and just have that conversation of, hey, I need your contract is you start at 8. And they appreciated that I called them out. And we just kind of moved on from there. So yes, we can
Mhm.
be friends, but in the workplace, we're still I have to keep you accountable. So,
Right.
but it's definitely evolved, maybe a cautious trust. But I've got enough things to do on my desk. I don't need to be doing their job at the same time. So definitely not a micromanager.
Yeah. Okay. I love what you're saying here because I think this is important for people to remember about their managers that they are human too. And
Hmm.
they have seen things and they have had experiences. So if you are somebody that wants that high trust and maybe you have a manager that is a little bit more cautious about it, it might not have anything to do with you. It might just be the experience
Yep.
that that manager has had with different people along the way, and they need to be
Hmm.
with you a certain amount of time before they can trust you. So I love that you
Hmm.
brought that up because I think that people get so involved in themselves that they forget that the manager has
Yes.
experiences as well.
Yes. Yes. I agree. And that's something that when I'm interviewing, not to jump forward in what we are going to talk about, but when I'm interviewing people, I just try to let them know as a manager, I make mistakes too. I ask all of my interviewees, what's a mistake you've made before? Because my goal is to make this an atmosphere where we can own our mistakes, and that includes me as well. So I will tell people, yes, that's on me. I completely forgot to do that. And it could be from ordering a certain supply that they were expecting, all the way to, hey, did you talk to so and so about this incident? You know what? That completely fell off my radar, but I will definitely get that taken care of. It's not just owning my mistakes to my superiors, but owning my mistakes to my staff as well. So letting them
Yeah.
know I'm human, really speaking to that, we all have that, we all make, and I've said it, we all make mistakes. So it's just being willing to talk and communicate and have an open door for that.
Yes. Okay. I want to go back to something you said about the interviewing because I feel like
Mm-hmm.
this is so important. I was asked this earlier in my career. Somebody asked me, tell me a time when you failed. And I feel like it's a similar
Mm-hmm.
question to tell me about a mistake that you made. The language is slightly different. But I want to
Yeah.
bring that up because that is a question that I think tends to get asked a lot that some people are not prepared to answer.
Mm-hmm.
And I was not prepared to answer that question. And I will tell you why, because the way that my personality works is everything can be better, everything can be improved.
Okay.
So I don't necessarily see things as a failure. I see it as it didn't work out well this way. So we're going to pivot and we're going to do something else. And I never saw that as failure. And this was a phone interview, y'all. I sat on the phone for probably 30 seconds of silence because I could not think of anything.
Yeah.
So this is
Yep.
my cautionary tale to everyone to think of something, have that in your back pocket of a
Yep.
failure or a mistake or something that somebody else would deem that way, because I got completely caught off guard with it. So that's
Mm-hmm.
my little piece of advice for you.
Yep. Well, and if I can hit on two things there, one of them, taking that 30 seconds to think. A lot of people think silence in an interview is awful. And to me, that says, no, you're actually thinking about the question. This isn't something you just planned for a canned response. So they're actually contemplating what I asked them. So in my eyes, I'm a manager that take your time, think about it. I tell them it's a very conversational interview. So if they don't have an answer, we can come back to it. Or if they want to take time, I'm okay with that. Of course, I'm not going to sit there for 5 minutes while they think on one question.
Let's talk about the hiring process. So we just started talking about
Okay.
interviewing. Let's take it a couple steps back and talk about hiring, because I want to kind of walk through the experience of somebody that would work for you from beginning to end. So let's talk about hiring. What are you looking for, on a resume? We talked a little bit about the interview process, but I want to hone in a little bit on the resume, because one of the things that I preach to people all the time is every manager has their own preference. Every hiring manager has a preference. Like every person has their own preference for things. What are the things that you are looking for on a resume from people?
I am not necessarily looking for exact things that they're going to be doing in the position I'm hiring for. I'm looking for keywords. I'm looking for experience. A lot of it is showing initiative. So seeing things that wording is so important on a resume. So try not to make it all past tense. So I want to see that you're currently doing things. And if we're basing it on a resume, whether we do an interview or not, where I look at it as I want to see things that are still happening instead of created or illustrated such and such report. I want to know that you're still using that skill regularly, because that's something I could
Mhm.
either ask you about or I could depend on in this role. Um, I'm going to look the experience, and then people skills. So is it
Mm.
they're only putting the technical skills on there? Um, I mean, sure, technical is great. We can learn technical. So people skills is what I want to see. Have you had to do um, deep thought, critical thinking? That's what it is. Have you had to do critical thinking as far as dealing with in my industry, patients or customer service, anything along that line where it tells me you know more about people than just putting them in a spreadsheet. Um,
Mm.
so knowing that I don't have to worry about you and your interactions with the other patients.
Yes. Okay. I love this. And I want to stop on this for just a second, because I think what I've been seeing more often in resumes with soft skills, which is essentially what you're talking about, those people skills, is I'm seeing people put them in a list, right? Like on the side of the resume or whatever. And I like actively tell people, do not put skills on a little list on the side because it's not
Mm-hmm.
applicable. Nobody's going to understand how you've used that. And so I want to get like a little confirmation from you that you're looking for it in kind of their statements under their positions of how they are doing that, what they are actually doing and working with people and all of that, right?
Yes. So one example would be for if I'm hiring for one of my front office positions, my office has 20 to 25 people on any given day just in the front office, checking patients in, answering phones along those lines. And there's constantly conflict with patients. I hate to say it, but it's the medical industry. Some people say the customer's always right, so the patient's always right. Unfortunately, that's not the case. There's going to be conflict that comes up. So underneath, if they've been a customer service representative or a receptionist in a medical practice, underneath there, I like to see something about conflict management with patients or initiating conflict resolution, something along that line that tells me they know how to deal with people.
Yes, yes. Okay, so I just want to make sure everybody heard that. It needs to be
Mm-hmm.
in the statements, not just in a list
Yeah.
on the side.
Yes.
Okay, so let's move forward. Let's say you've got two candidates that are very similar. Maybe they have similar background, they presented similarly. How do you make that choice? Because I'm getting that feedback from a lot of people that they're coming down to,
Okay.
they were one of the last candidates and they felt like everything was going well and all the feedback was positive, and then the other person, was picked. How do you make those hard decisions?
I will base it off of once we get to that moment where they're so similar, I do have to start looking at those nitpicky details. One thing that I can use outside of that, everyone that comes through for an interview, if I want to make an offer, I have to do a peer interview with them. So there has to be a peer where I am not involved. They can talk about whatever they want. And I've gotten completely opposite information from those peer interviews. So that's one thing I can rely on. But I also will look at, was their cell phone silenced? It's 2023. I'll be honest. Our phones are going to ring, they're going to vibrate. Okay. So, but if we get down to that nitty gritty, did they remember to silence their phone? What was um, how did they present with their communication and talking? Word usage can determine things. And so I have to think about, will they fit in with my patient base? So I'll unfortunately have to start really getting nitty gritty on, phones, timeliness. Did they send a thank you email? So the little details that make a difference.
Okay, I'm so glad that you're saying this because these are things that, as a career coach, if I'm doing interview prep with somebody, we talk about that. These are little like things that we talk about. And I feel like there's a narrative out there right now that's like, why is everybody being so particular? Like, we're all human, we're all this, we're all that. And I'm like, I get that. I absolutely understand what you're saying. However, in these scenarios, when you have a candidate pool that is very similar, it
Yes.
is going to come down to these small things. And it sounds ridiculous, but how else do you make those decisions when you have similar candidates? And so it's
Yes.
so good that you're saying this because I think it gets people to think about just those little things. I always talk about if you're going in person for something, which is coming back into style again, right? Like, how are you approaching everybody? How do you drive into the lot? I mean, small things like that
Yeah.
can impact the whole experience. So I'm so glad that you said that. Thank you so much.
Yeah. If you speed by the front door and I've got my reception telling me so and so's here for their interview, by the way, they were driving like a maniac into the lot, that makes a difference.
Right. Right. Hey there, Julia here. Is this episode resonating with you? Maybe it's got you questioning how you can better communicate with your manager, team, or just learn more about how to control your career. Well, I've busted into this episode to tell you about my career action coaching. Career coaching is more than job search and resumes. It's also about managing the day-to-day situations that come up in your career. This coaching option is perfect for the career management situations that you're dealing with, along with other career-related challenges or goals. This is a flexible coaching option to help tackle specific topics to move forward efficiently and confidently. Not all coaching requires a 6-month commitment. Career Action Coaching is 3-hour-long sessions that can be customized to your unique needs. Before committing, let's discuss what you need in my complimentary career coaching clarity call. The link will be in the show notes and the description for this episode. Now let's get back to the show. Let's go on to you've hired somebody, they're in it, right? You're managing them and we're doing one-on-ones. What do one-on-ones look like for you? How do you conduct them? What's kind of the process there?
Yeah. I have done it 2 ways. I have done it where it's a scheduled time every single month. The office I was at before this one, I had about 24 people that I needed to meet with. And based on that number, I was told you need to do one-on-ones monthly. That's when they were scheduled. They were every month at the same time, second Thursday at 11 a.m. Just come in, it'll be a short. And the company, so HCA gives us a list of questions, and it's like, here are samples of what you should be covering in your one-on-ones. I try to personalize it more, just create it more conversational and get them to open up. Because again, I'm a people person, so I want to know about them. I want to know, what are their barriers that they're having to overcome when they're coming to work. So I feel like as a manager, when we show we care, then they're going to be more apt to do the job they're supposed to and even go above that because, oh, my manager cares about me.
Right.
So I've done it to where there's scheduled meetings, but I've also done it to where the office I'm in now, I've got 75 people that I need to do one-on-ones with. So now I'm supposed to touch base every quarter. And it's just one of those, okay, scheduling this is not going to work. So it's a very organic, hey, come talk to me for 5 minutes. How are things going? What technology do you need? Just finding out how I can help them progress. So it's gone from scheduled to my calendar just would be crazy if I scheduled every single thing. So
Okay, I think this is also one of those things that's important for employees to understand about their manager in terms of how many people do you have reporting to you. If you have a small team, I come from higher education, so most of the managers there, you have a small team, like less than 5 people in most cases. And
yep.
so weekly was very common. But in a scenario where you have 75 people reporting to you, you cannot be meeting with everybody all the time.
Yep.
And I think this comes back to when I'm working with somebody, I always ask them, do you understand your manager's situation? Do you understand what they have on their plate, what the expectations are of them? Because that could also be impacting how they're communicating, how they're engaging with you. And so I'm glad that you said that, because you're talking about completely different, management loads. And then how do you manage that on a day-to-day basis?
Yep. My goal as a manager is to keep that communication line open, regardless of what I have on my plate. The only way that I might close that a little bit is I close my door. So if I really need to focus on something, I'm going to close my door. But most of the time, 90% of the time, my door is open. And I want them to feel like they can WebEx me. They can just walk in. Definitely that open door, open communication policy to where yes, I want them to know I have 75 people that directly report to me. That but that is also in addition to the 18 providers that I have in my building. So it's making sure, yes, I want them to know that, but I want them to think they're still the one. I want people
Right.
to be able to talk to me and tell me honestly what's going on. So, because if
Yeah.
I don't get details, I can't fix things.
Right. Right. Okay. I feel like this goes into the next question, but I think I know what you're going to say. So I wanted to know, like, how do you expect your employees to engage with you?
Mhm.
And just in the conversation that we're having now, it seems like because you do have such a huge load of people that your employees have to be proactive in
Yes.
connecting with you because you aren't
Mhm.
always going to be able to do that because trying to keep track of over 75 people's like day-to-day tasks and moods and life situations becomes a lot, right? And so then
Yeah.
you're very much in a scenario where the employee has to take, the
Mhm.
initiative there, which I talk to so many people. My first question is, have you talked to your manager?
Yep.
Well, no, they should be reaching out to me, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I can hear you, but,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
And see, I try to help with that in that daily, at least once, I will try to walk around my building and hit every pod. So I may
mm,
do the first floor in the morning when I first get here, and the second floor beginning of the afternoon. But in some fashion, make myself known, I guess, so that people know I'm here. It gives them a chance to say something to me. I walk around with either my computer or a notepad because if 15
mm,
people tell me something while I'm walking around, I'm not going to remember everything when I get back. So, but I do like to let them know, hey, I'm here. Anything going on right now while I'm standing in front of you. But yeah, a lot of it has to be proactive, and it comes with the position. But
right.
yeah, just making sure they know.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about something that not many people want to talk about, but becomes a reality of just working, especially in like corporate environments. And those are PIPs, which you might have a different name
Yes.
for it, but essentially they are performance improvement plans. So, in your scenario, in the work that you do, what what does it take for an employee to get to that point? Like, you know, what is getting them there and like can they
Yes.
recover from it? Like how bad does it have to be to get to that point?
It usually has to get pretty bad, at least where I am. So by the time you're getting to a PIP, and we do call them PIPs, so you've gone through at least some form of coaching. Um, then you've got your verbal warning, a written warning, and then there's only one step after. Well, no, written warning, and then the PIP can usually come either after the written or the final written.
Mm,
Final written, it's you got to turn this around really quick. But anytime after the written warning, we'll document if it's performance based. This is what you got to do. Um, the performance, not perform. That is the PIP. The corrective action that we do for attendance write-ups, it's pretty much a PIP in itself. So just
right.
because it says you got to improve attendance, all this. But the PIPs that we do, it's usually, hey, we're not headed down a good road. So by the
Mm,
time you get to that written, I mean, that's the third step in the process, out of five. And so you're really just trying to, if you haven't, we've talked about how you can improve. Here is now the written documentation of how you can improve, and this is what we're going to be judging it off of.
right. Right. Do you feel like in your experience managing people, do you feel like you've seen people recover from that? Like the PIP is kind of the thing that makes them go, "Oh shoot, I'm going to lose my job." Or are they just like checked out at that point and don't even want to continue?
Yep, I've seen it both. I've seen it both ways. So I've seen it. We get to the PIP, and they're like, "Okay, I better straighten up. I better do what I'm supposed to," and they improve their performance. We're able to get them off the PIP, and then we keep going. Unfortunately, I've seen the other side. And the example I have with that is it was a front office worker that just could not do the job. It got to a
Mm,
point where they just could not keep up anymore. And so we went through all the different warnings and everything. We created the PIP, and then she still just could not do it. And wasn't a lack of trying, but in healthcare especially, mistakes can be dangerous and they can be risky in
right.
healthcare. Um, that's why I really want that atmosphere of, hey, I did this. I don't want them to look at it as, oh, it's just going to be another notch in my chart that I get in trouble for. No, it's an educational opportunity that we can make sure you don't do it again. So,
Right.
unfortunately for this person, they just couldn't do it. And we continued after the PIP, and she no longer is here. So
Mm.
it's just one of those, it's sad to go there, but that's why we do them. So it laid it out. This is what needs to happen.
Well, and I think this is such an important conversation to have. One, you don't want people to leave if
Yeah.
they can do the job, right?
Yep.
And so I'm thinking, I have so many thoughts running through my head. One, people are lying on resumes these days in a
Hmm.
crazy way. And I feel like this is one of those things, not saying that she did that, but just in general, this is
Okay.
why you don't lie on
Hmm.
a resume. Because if you
Yep.
can't do the job, right? If you get in there thinking, yeah, I can do it, and then you can't, then this is the recourse. Like this is what ends up happening. And I think too, it's
Yeah.
important in this scenario, we're talking about healthcare, and front office for healthcare is wildly
Mhm.
different than front office for like a small business, that maybe gets 4 calls
Yeah.
a day and they're
Yeah.
mostly doing like invoicing and things like that. You're talking about
Mhm.
two different skill sets, two different paces. You're talking about the risk, right? Like dealing with
Yep.
patients and clients versus, probably mostly being alone or working with staff and all of that. And I think
Hmm.
even that, somebody might look at that and be like, oh, it's front desk work. No, those are two
Yeah.
different types of front desk work. And I think that's some of what I want people to understand here is just because you've done one type does not mean that you can
Hmm.
step into the other. And so you have to
Yes.
think about that in terms of like your own skill development and what you're able to handle in terms of pressure, right?
Hmm.
Like I know for me, I would never want to work in healthcare. Way too much pressure, way too much risk. Like I
Hmm.
know myself and I know that that's not an environment that I would thrive in. And so I think that's
Hmm.
such an important conversation for people to have with themselves when you're thinking about
Yep.
applying to certain types of positions.
Absolutely. Yeah. Healthcare, I mean, this office gets roughly 400 to 500 phone calls a day. And when they're taking the messages, I mean, they are the liaison between the patient and getting that message to the clinical team. So if they're needing refills of certain medications, we got to get it right. So you
Mm-hmm.
have to make sure, if they need or they're having certain symptoms, we have to document things correctly. And of course, there's workflows that can be written for days, but they have to be able to follow them and understand them because it could be not always life and death, but it can be a risk to people if they're not doing what they're supposed to.
Right, right. Okay, let's talk about growth because I know
Mhm.
the being on a PIP and all that, like very depressing. But let's talk about the growth side of this. So you
Yes.
have a lot of people reporting to you. So how do you keep your employees growing in their position? Like what's your role
Hmm.
in that versus what's their role in that?
Yeah. So I look for who's been showing initiative, who's been, going that extra step. Oh, this needs to be done. Who's volunteering for things? Um, and not only if they're just volunteering for things, how are they doing once they volunteer for it? So, I mean, little things like who's sorting the mail every day. So the person that used to do that, no, took another job somewhere else. That's completely fine. We all move on from things. But okay, who's now going to sort the mail? Someone volunteered. And it's like, okay, are they excelling at that? Are things getting shredded that shouldn't? There's so many different details and everything. So, following them after that initiative. Um, but as far as, further growth, I like to, so say there's a level above like my front office staff that helps me run the front office. And
Mm,
the medical office coordinator position, I couldn't survive without. They bring things to me and say, hey, this is what's going on, for things that I can't see. So I like to look at current MOSs, medical office specialists, as our front office. Are they ready for that MOC position? So, and we like to, if my position as practice manager comes open, we like to look at our MOCs, to see if they would be best suited to step into a PM role.
mm.
We always, at least for College Park within HCA, we always look at internal first. So I tell people, I want you to be able to grow if that's what you want to do. If you're happy where you're at, I'm okay with that too. I'm not going to force you to go further. Yeah, just making sure that they're doing what they're supposed to. They can grow if they want to. I've had front office that went from front office medical office specialist, and they became an MA and decided they wanted to do medical assisting. And
Mm.
HCA does provide that benefit after a certain amount of time. They will pay for you to take the medical assistant certification test.
Wow.
So it's kind of one of those benefits where HCA invests in them, um, in order to better themselves. One little thing I like to do is, for our online employee education that we do, I like to encourage my staff. I started with once a quarter. That didn't happen. So usually once we're to once a year now, I'll be honest. I like to tell them, find something in health stream that is completely unrelated to what you do,
Mm.
and either watch a video, take the training, something of that, and then come tell me about what you learned. Because it
Right.
may spark an interest. It may be something that they've never even thought of before, but oh, I'd like to go down this a little bit. So it's a challenge I give them. Not everybody does it because I can't make it mandatory and say, oh, you're getting a point if you don't do this. But to me, it's a way for them to grow as well.
Yeah. Oh, I love hearing that. I think that's such a good thing that you look internally first because you trust them and people trust who they see on a
Mhm.
day-to-day basis. It can be really hard to bring people in externally, especially when you're
Yep.
in such like a high volume place and you need people to kind of hit the ground running when they start a
Yeah.
position.
Yeah.
I think that that's so good. And I think this is kind of I think there are some more like corporate positions that do run like this and teams that run like this, but it's not as common. I'm seeing a
Hmm.
lot of hiring managers hire externally versus
Yeah.
internally, which creates so much animosity on a team
Yeah.
when that happens. And so, not to say that there's anything right or wrong about that, it completely depends on what's
No.
needed, who has the
Hmm.
qualifications, and all of that. There are a lot of factors that go into
Absolutely.
it. But I think just knowing that y'all are providing those opportunities for your staff, I think that's what's important is that they know it's there, right? Versus
Hmm.
I've had a lot of smaller, because I would consider, even though you do have quite a few people, it's still kind of a small mid-sized business.
Hmm.
A lot of businesses
Yeah.
like that do not provide any type of continuing education or anything really. And I think that that's when people get frustrated because it's like, we're doing the same thing day in and day
Hmm.
out. Where's my growth? What's going to
Yes.
happen? How do I become better
Hmm.
at my position? So I love hearing when companies really invest in their employees that way.
Yeah.
Okay, we are at the end of this interview. Adam, this has been so good. I think this is going to be so helpful for people to just understand the mindset of a manager and what they're thinking about and how their workload
Hmm.
impacts you as an employee. And I would love for you to kind of leave us with one last bit of advice or an action that you think people should take kind of based on your experience as a people manager?
The biggest piece of advice that I have, and it applies both to staff approaching their manager and managers and how they approach their staff, is be mindful of what they have going on.
Mhm.
Staff, be mindful. I mean, we've said it several times. Your manager probably has a ton of things that are going on all at once, but then there's still the 25 emails that they haven't even opened that are doing some kind of request. How many WebEx or Teams messages where it's multiple requests? Hey, I got scheduled at a certain place. Why is that? So just be mindful that they've got a lot going on, but yes, they're still your manager. And then managers looking at your staff, be mindful of what they have going on. Get to know them, because I talked to someone earlier this morning that was, hey, my daughter's got an appointment at 3 o'clock. Can I leave at 2:45? They'd already checked with their provider, or they'd already checked with the other clinical person on their team. So they'd already taken care of the legwork. I was fine with it. So it's just
Mhm.
make sure you know your staff and be mindful they have lives too. It's all about we're human.
Yes. Oh, that is the perfect ending. That is it. Thank you so much. I am going to put your LinkedIn profile link into the blog post for this episode. So anybody that wants to connect with you can go there and send you a message or connect with you if they have any other questions. But thank you so much for being a guest. This was really great.
Yeah, thanks for having me.